Iceland may look like a quiet island of volcanoes, glaciers, and northern lights, but its history is anything but silent. From Viking settlers braving the North Atlantic to a modern nation shaped by independence, resilience, and innovation, the story of Iceland is both epic and inspiring. In this video, we'll journey through the dramatic events, cultural milestones, and powerful forces that have shaped this small but mighty country. Whether you're a history lover, a travel enthusiast, or just curious about this unique Nordic nation, this is a story you don't want to miss. The history of Iceland begins in one of the most thrilling chapters of human migration, the Viking Age. While Iceland may seem remote and isolated today, during the 9th century, it became the frontier of Norse exploration and settlement. The story of Iceland's settlement is a tale of bravery, survival, and the pursuit of freedom, and it laid the foundation for a distinct Icelandic identity that continues to this day. Discovery of Iceland before permanent settlement began, Iceland was known only to a few seafarers. First known Norse explorer to deliberately sail to Iceland was Nadod, a Norwegian who accidentally discovered the island around 860 AD while lost on his way to the Faroe Islands. He named it Snaland Snoland because of its snowy mountains. Soon after, Gardar Svavarsson, a Swede, circumnavigated the island and confirmed it was not just a large peninsula, but a separate landmass. He stayed over winter and built the first known house in Iceland near Húsavík. Another explorer, Floki Vilhjálmsson, gave the island the name we know today, Iceland. According to the Landnámabók, the Book of Settlements, Floki climbed a mountain and saw a fjord filled with icebergs, which inspired the name island. Permanent settlement begins. The true story of Iceland's settlement begins in 874 AD, when Ingólfur Arnarsson, a chieftain from Norway, became the first permanent settler. Driven by a mix of curiosity, exile, and the desire to escape the growing power of the Norwegian monarchy, Ingólfur sailed west with his family and slaves. Upon reaching Iceland, he threw his high seat pillars, the symbol of his authority, into the sea and vowed to build his settlement wherever they landed. They washed ashore in the area that would later become Reykjavik, now the capital of Iceland. This act wasn't just symbolic. It reflected the deeply religious and cultural mindset of the early Norse settlers. They believed their fate was guided by the gods, and by letting nature and divine will decide the location, they hoped to be blessed with prosperity. Wave of migration between 874 and 930 AD, thousands of Norse settlers followed. Most came from western Norway, but some also originated from the British Isles, including Irish and Scottish slaves or thralls. These Celtic influences subtly shaped Icelandic genetics, art, and even place names, though Norse culture and language dominated. Settlers chose plots of land throughout the fertile lowlands and coastal regions. With no central government, these chieftains ruled their own domains. Despite the harsh volcanic terrain, they adapted quickly, raising sheep, growing hardy crops like barley, and relying heavily on fishing and hunting. The significance of settlement. The settlement era shaped everything that followed in Icelandic history. It established the landnám land, taking tradition, where land was claimed and farmed by individuals or families. It created a decentralized but highly cooperative society, based on Norse law and oral tradition. The Icelandic people brought with them not just tools and livestock, but also the Old Norse language, which evolved into modern Icelandic, a language that has changed so little that Icelanders today can still read their ancient sagas in the original script. Perhaps most importantly, the settlers brought with them a fierce sense of independence. Many had left Norway to escape the centralizing power of King Harald Fairhair, seeking freedom from royal control. This desire for autonomy would later manifest in Iceland's unique political structures, like the Alþingi parliament, and would define its cultural identity for centuries. This Viking settlement laid the groundwork for a resilient nation, one born out of harsh nature, strong will, and a spirit of exploration. Iceland's origin story is not just history, it is the living soul of its people. One of the most remarkable achievements in Iceland's early history, and indeed in the world's history of governance, is the establishment of the Alþingi in Icelandic in 930 AD. Recognized as the oldest surviving parliament in the world, the Alþingi reflects Iceland's deep-rooted traditions of democracy, law, and community collaboration. In a time when kings and feudal lords ruled much of Europe with absolute power, Iceland's settlers took a different path, choosing collective decision, making over monarchy, and law over violence. Why the Alþingi was created after Iceland was settled by Norse chieftains between 874 and 930 AD, it became clear that a common legal structure was needed. The settlers, known as Godar chieftains, had claimed various pieces of land and governed their local areas. But disputes between families, landowners, or clans were becoming more frequent. Without a central authority, Iceland risked chaos. To avoid civil war and ensure justice, Icelanders agreed to form a general assembly where all major issues, legal, political, and social, could be discussed and resolved. This agreement was based on the Norse Thing system, a traditional community assembly from Scandinavia. However, the Icelandic version would become more advanced, organized, and inclusive over time. Þingvellir, the historic site, the Alþingi was held annually at Þingvellir, a natural amphitheater located about 45 km northeast of modern-day Reykjavik. This place was chosen not only for its central location, but also for its dramatic geography, a wide rift valley formed by the meeting of two tectonic plates. It became the spiritual and political heart of the Icelandic nation. Each summer, thousands of Icelanders would travel by foot or horseback to Þingvellir, setting up temporary camps. It was more than just a political event. It was a national gathering where families reunited, merchants traded goods, marriages were arranged, and news from across the island was shared. How the Alþingi worked. The Alþingi was not a single body, like today's parliaments, but a complex assembly of free men, chieftains, and law speakers. The most important figure was the law speaker Lögreglumaður, who was responsible for reciting laws aloud as they were not written down at first and overseeing the proceedings. Laws were remembered and preserved through oral tradition, making the role of the law speaker highly respected and crucial. The assembly dealt with dispute resolution, including property conflicts and blood feuds, lawmaking, and revisions of old laws, court cases, often heard by panels of judges. Punishments, which ranged from fines to outlawry banishment. Crucially, there was no king or police force. Decisions made at the Alþingi were enforced by social pressure, family honor, and the threat of exile. A surprisingly effective system for such a remote and rugged land. Legacy of the Alþingi functioned as the central institution of Iceland's Commonwealth era until 1262, when Iceland came under the rule of the Norwegian crown. Though it lost some of its power during the centuries of foreign rule, it was never entirely dissolved. It was revived as a legislative body in the 19th century and continues today as Iceland's national parliament in Reykjavik. This continuity makes the Alþingi a symbol of national pride and democratic tradition. It stands as a testament to Icelanders' long-standing belief in self-governance, justice, and collective decision-making. In a world that often celebrates empires and monarchies, Iceland's early political system offers a compelling alternative, a society guided by law, dialogue, and shared responsibility. The Alþingi isn't just a relic of history, it's proof that even in the harshest environments, people can choose peace over power. While Iceland began as an independent commonwealth ruled by local chieftains and guided by the Alþingi, that independence did not last forever. Over the course of several centuries, from the mid-1200s to the early 20th century, Iceland was ruled first by Norway, then by Denmark. This long period of foreign rule significantly impacted Iceland's political development, economy, and national identity. Yet, despite centuries of outside control, Iceland preserved its language, literature, and cultural independence, becoming a powerful example of resilience under foreign dominance. End of the Icelandic Commonwealth 1262. The Icelandic Commonwealth, also known as the Free State, lasted from 930 to 1262. But by the mid-13th century, internal conflicts known as the Age of the Sturlungs, a series of civil wars among powerful chieftain families, weakened the stability of Iceland's decentralized political system. These bloody feuds eroded the effectiveness of the Alþingi and created openings for outside influence. Many Icelanders, tired of chaos and violence, sought protection and peace, even if it meant submitting to a foreign monarch. In 1262, a majority of chieftains agreed to the Old Covenant Gamli Sáttmáli, a treaty that brought Iceland under the Norwegian crown. While Iceland retained some autonomy and the Alþingi still functioned, the country had now entered a new political chapter, monarchic rule. Union with Denmark 1380. The next major shift came in 1380, when the Kingdom of Norway entered a union with Denmark. Iceland, as a Norwegian dependency, was transferred under Danish rule, a situation that lasted for more than 500 years. Over time, Denmark consolidated its control, and Iceland's independence weakened further. The Danish monarchy began to exert more direct influence over Icelandic affairs, particularly through trade monopolies and religious control. The Reformation and Danish control in the 16th century, the Protestant Reformation swept across northern Europe. Denmark, under King Christian Roman III, adopted Lutheranism, and Iceland was forced to follow. This transition was not peaceful. One of the most dramatic episodes was the execution of John Arason, the last Catholic bishop of Iceland, in 1550. This event marked the full enforcement of Lutheran Christianity in Iceland and the suppression of Catholic institutions. The Danish crown also established a trade monopoly in the 17th and 18th centuries. Icelanders were legally forbidden from trading with any country other than Denmark, leading to economic stagnation and increased hardship. Famines, disease, and volcanic eruptions such as the devastating Laki eruption in 1783 further worsened the country's situation during this era. Preservation of culture and language. Despite these hardships, Icelanders fiercely preserved their cultural identity. The Icelandic language remained intact, largely because it continued to be used in churches and schools. Remarkably, Icelanders maintained a literary tradition that reached back to the medieval Icelandic sagas and Eddas, preserving some of the richest early European literature. In many ways, these centuries of foreign rule only strengthened Icelandic national consciousness. A sense of shared suffering, combined with pride in language and history, laid the groundwork for the modern independence movement. Steps toward independence. The 19th century saw growing movements for self-governance. Inspired by the European wave of nationalism, Icelanders demanded more autonomy. The Alþingi was re-established as a consultative body in 1845, and by 1874, Denmark granted Iceland a constitution and limited home rule. In 1918, Iceland became a sovereign state in personal union with Denmark, meaning it had full internal autonomy while sharing the same monarch. This arrangement lasted until 1944, when Iceland finally became an independent republic. The union with Norway and Denmark was a long chapter of foreign control, but it never erased Iceland's sense of self. Instead, these centuries tested and strengthened the Icelandic spirit, shaping a nation that would rise from subjugation with its culture, language, and pride fully intact. After centuries under foreign rule, first by Norway and then Denmark, Iceland took a monumental step toward full sovereignty. In the 20th century, the independence movement and the eventual formation of the Icelandic Republic in 1944 represent a turning point in the country's history. It was the moment when Icelanders not only reclaimed their political freedom, but also reasserted their national identity on the world stage. The roots of the independence movement, the seeds of Iceland's independence, were planted in the 19th century during a time of rising nationalism across Europe. Influenced by other independence movements, Icelandic intellectuals, poets, and politicians began to call for greater autonomy from Denmark. Key figures like John Sigurdsson, now regarded as a national hero, became vocal advocates for self-rule. His famous motto, "We all want to be Icelanders," captured the mood of the nation and remains a powerful symbol of Icelandic unity. In 1845, the Alþingi was re-established by Danish decree, not yet with full power, but as a consultative legislative body. Then, in 1874, to mark 10 years of Icelandic settlement, Denmark granted Iceland its own constitution and control over internal affairs, an important but limited step. Over the next decades, further milestones followed. Increased legislative power in 1904 and home rule that allowed Iceland to manage its domestic policy independently while remaining under Danish sovereignty. The Act of Union 1918. The real breakthrough came in 1918 with the signing of the Act of Union. This agreement recognized Iceland as a sovereign state in personal union with the King of Denmark. Iceland now controlled its own foreign affairs, had its own flag, and conducted diplomatic relations, but it still shared a monarch with Denmark, much like the relationship between the UK and its dominions at the time e.g., Canada or Australia. While many Icelanders saw this as progress, others viewed it as a transitional step on the road to full independence. World War II and the opportunity for change. Ironically, it was World War II that created the right conditions for Iceland's final push toward complete independence. In 1940, after Germany invaded Denmark, Iceland found itself isolated from the Danish crown. With no active connection to the Danish government, Iceland began to function more independently. In May 1940, British forces occupied Iceland to prevent a Nazi takeover, later replaced by American troops in 1941. Though Iceland was officially neutral, these events further solidified its de facto independence. Becoming a republic 1944 with Denmark under Nazi control and the Icelandic people already functioning autonomously, the time had come for a decisive break. In May 1944, a national referendum was held to determine whether Iceland should terminate the union with Denmark and declare itself a republic. The result was overwhelming. Over 95% of voters supported ending the union, and 99.5% supported the creation of a republic. On June 17, 1944, Iceland formally declared its independence at Þingvellir, the historic site of the original Alþingi. The date was chosen to honor John Sigurdsson's birthday, linking the new republic to the legacy of its most celebrated independence leader. The legacy of independence, the birth of the Republic of Iceland, was peaceful, democratic, and driven by the will of the people, an inspiring example of how a small nation can achieve sovereignty without violence or revolution. Denmark, by then liberated from Nazi occupation, formally acknowledged and respected Iceland's decision. Today, June 17 is celebrated as Iceland's National Day, a symbol of unity, democracy, and cultural pride. The formation of the Republic not only gave Iceland full control over its domestic and foreign policies, it marked the rebirth of a nation that had waited nearly 700 years to reclaim its full freedom. It was the beginning of modern Iceland as we know it, independent, resilient, and ready to shape its own future. Iceland's journey from a poor, isolated agrarian society to one of the world's most modern, environmentally progressive economies is one of the most remarkable transformations in recent history. This evolution wasn't linear. It involved overcoming geographic challenges, natural disasters, and financial crises. Yet through resilience, innovation, and a deep connection to its natural surroundings, Iceland has built a sustainable and globally admired economic model. From agriculture to modernization for most of its history, Iceland was a rural, subsistence-based society. Harsh winters, volcanic soil, and limited arable land meant that survival depended on sheep farming, fishing, and small-scale agriculture. Iceland's isolation made trade difficult, and it remained one of Europe's poorest countries well into the 19th century. The 20th century brought dramatic change. As technology advanced and transportation improved, Iceland began to develop its infrastructure. The introduction of mechanized fishing vessels in the early 1900s revolutionized the fishing industry, transforming it into Iceland's economic backbone. By mid-century, fisheries accounted for over 90% of exports, and they remain a major part of the economy today. Harnessing natural energy. A global leader, one of Iceland's greatest economic advantages lies underground, in its abundant geothermal energy and hydropower resources. Thanks to its volcanic activity, Iceland is one of the few countries in the world that meets almost 100% of its electricity needs through renewable energy. Geothermal energy is used for heating homes and buildings, powering industries, supplying public hot water systems, supporting greenhouses for year-round agriculture. This not only reduces energy costs, but has made Iceland a global model for clean energy and sustainability. Its green energy policy also attracts eco-conscious tourism and data centers seeking low-cost, low-carbon operations. Tourism boom and economic diversification. In recent decades, Iceland has successfully diversified beyond fishing. After the 2010 eruption of Eyjafjallajökull, the world suddenly noticed Iceland's unique landscapes, glaciers, geysers, waterfalls, and volcanoes. This led to an explosion in tourism, turning it into the country's largest export sector by the late 2010s. Tourism has created thousands of jobs, revitalized rural communities, and attracted global attention. At the same time, Iceland has invested in digital technology, education, and entrepreneurship, positioning itself as a hub for innovation, especially in biotech, clean tech, and creative industries like music and film. The 2008 financial crisis and recovery. Iceland's economic journey hasn't been without setbacks. The 2008 global financial crisis hit Iceland harder than most. Its three major banks collapsed, the currency plummeted, and unemployment soared. The collapse wiped out savings, devastated businesses, and forced a reckoning with aggressive deregulation and debt-fueled growth. But Iceland's response was widely praised. Unlike many countries, Iceland let its banks fail, prosecuted corrupt bankers, and implemented capital controls to stabilize the economy. With support from the IMF and Nordic neighbors, it slowly recovered. By 2012, Iceland was back to growth, stronger, more cautious, and more transparent. A commitment to environmental protection. Icelanders have a deep respect for their land, perhaps because they've always lived so close to nature's extremes. That respect has shaped national policies on conservation, climate action, and sustainable living. Protected national parks preserve its natural beauty. Fishing quotas and marine conservation efforts support long-term sustainability. Reykjavik aims to become carbon neutral by 2040. Iceland has also been at the forefront of climate change awareness, as melting glaciers and rising sea levels directly impact the island nation. It's become a voice in global forums for renewable energy and environmental leadership. Conclusion: Iceland's economic and environmental evolution is a story of resilience, reinvention, and responsibility. From a nation of sheep farmers and fishermen to a leader in sustainability and clean energy, Iceland proves that small countries can make a big impact when they work in harmony with their natural resources and values. Though Iceland is a small island nation with a population of just over 370,000, its cultural footprint on the world is strikingly large. Iceland's cultural heritage is rooted in ancient traditions, storytelling, and language preservation, but it also shines through in its modern contributions to literature, music, film, and art. Icelanders are known for their creativity, independent spirit, and deep reverence for their land and legends, all of which shape a unique national identity that captivates people around the world. The Icelandic language, a living link to the past. One of Iceland's most impressive cultural traits is its language. Icelandic is a direct descendant of Old Norse, the language spoken by Viking settlers more than 1,000 years ago. Due to the country's isolation, Icelandic has changed very little, making it one of the purest and most conservative languages in the world. This linguistic continuity means that modern Icelanders can still read ancient texts like the Alþingi Icelandic sagas in their original form. Language is not just a tool of communication here, it's seen as a bridge between generations and a source of national pride. Icelanders are deeply protective of their language, going so far as to create new Icelandic words for modern inventions rather than borrowing from other languages. The Icelandic sagas, Europe's earliest novels, the Icelandic sagas are a cornerstone of world literature. Written in the 12th to 14th centuries, these prose epics recount the lives of early settlers, their feuds, adventures, and struggles for justice. What makes them remarkable is their realistic tone, psychological depth, and timeless themes: love, honor, betrayal, and survival. Texts like Engel's Saga and Egil's Saga have been translated into many languages and studied worldwide. They influenced not only scholars but also modern authors like J.R.R. Tolkien, who drew from Norse mythology and saga literature when creating Middle-earth. These sagas are not just historical records. They are cultural treasures, blending fact and fiction into compelling narratives that continue to shape Iceland's sense of identity. Modern literature and global recognition, the literary tradition continues today. Iceland boasts more writers per capita than any other country. It's common for Icelanders to read, write, and even publish their own books. In fact, the tradition of giving books as gifts during Jólabókaflóð, the Christmas book flood, is a beloved part of Icelandic culture. Modern Icelandic authors like Halldór Laxness, who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1955, have brought international acclaim to the country's literary scene. His works, such as Independent People, explore themes of hardship, resilience, and Icelandic life in the 20th century, resonating deeply with global readers. Icelandic music and art. In recent decades, Iceland has become a hotspot for innovative music and art. Artists like Björk and Sigur Rós have brought Icelandic soundscapes to the world stage. Known for their ethereal tones and emotional depth, the music reflects Iceland's vast, untouched landscapes and often blends nature, folklore, and experimental elements. Reykjavik, the capital, is a cultural hub, home to numerous art galleries, music festivals, and design studios. Despite its size, the city fosters a vibrant artistic community that punches far above its weight on the global stage. Folklore, myths, and national character. Even in the modern age, folklore is an active part of Icelandic life. Stories of elves, hidden people, and trolls are not just charming tales. They are ingrained in the cultural mindset. Many Icelanders take these legends seriously enough that construction projects are sometimes altered to avoid disturbing elf homes. This enduring connection to myth and mystery reflects a deeper trait in the Icelandic character: a respect for the unseen, the natural world, and the narratives that shape both. Global influence from a small nation through its language, literature, music, and myths. Iceland has carved out a distinct cultural identity that resonates far beyond its borders. Whether through its ancient sagas or modern pop icons, Iceland continues to inspire creativity, curiosity, and admiration around the world.